Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Digital Selling Secrets podcast. On this podcast, we talk about sales, digital transformation, and leadership. And today, we have a very special guest with us from Wuhan, China, and we also have our co-host, Jerry Mannikarote. As you know, in Wuhan, China right now, they are suffering the devastation that's happening from the COVID-19 virus, and they're just now starting to recover. And so with us today, we have Lorenzo, who's a sales director in China, in Wuhan, China, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the entire ordeal from start to finish to give us an idea of what we may have to expect. Because as you know, here in the U.S., the virus cases are starting to increase substantially. First off, Lorenzo, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the podcast tonight.
Oh, thank you to you. And hello to everybody in America. I hope the situation is not so serious as here.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Before we get started, do you mind just give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I came to China in 2006. I came here in Wuhan. That time, Wuhan was a really, underdeveloped city. But then in short time, they catch up. They built around 10 lines of subway. Just to say, 3 new airports. There is now the fast train going around all over China. Wuhan is a city in the middle of China, so it's very important on the railway network because it is in the middle from the north-south, Beijing, Hong Kong, and east-west, so Shanghai, Chengdu. So it's a very important industrial city, around 12 million people. I married with a local lady in 2010. And we have 2 children, 8 and 6 year old. Yeah. And okay, since January, maybe we became the most famous city in the world, even if with negative, negative qualities, but the most famous, unfortunately, city in the world.
Absolutely. I've seen it on the news. Jerry, you've seen it on the news. Where a lot of crazy things have happened, as you can imagine, over the past 3 months, as you've experienced over the past few months, and so, could you mind telling us how what it was like when the cases started to escalate, maybe like we're seeing here in the U.S. up until now?
Sure. Let's say I heard of this virus the first time at the end of December, because I live around 200 meters from the famous, or now we can say infamous, market from where everything started. So I think among the foreigners living here in Wuhan, I'm one of the most inside the really red zone, the really red area. I also live 200 meters from the central hospital of Wuhan, where the first patients were treated, and where they started to spread out the news that a new kind of pneumonia disease was probably going around, starting from this market. So we got the news at the end of December. We bought the mask early January, but since that time, initially nothing was done by local authorities. Nothing was done by local people. I mean, the first days of January, many people were staying at home. I went to shopping mall. It was almost empty. But then, let's say around the January 10, January 15, the situation seemed back to normality. Then suddenly on January 20, China President, Mr. Xi Jinping, made a strong announcement saying whoever is keeping numbers, figures of the current disease going on in Wuhan is an enemy of the country. So really very strong, you can imagine, considering the country here and power here. It was really a very strong statement. And 3 days later, suddenly, even if it was quite expected, they shut down and locked down completely almost all the province, mostly Wuhan and some other cities, but totally finally around 40 million people. And so we were shut, lockdown here in Wuhan. Lockdown means that all trains, airplanes, subway, buses, taxi, everything was immediately stopped. And 2 days later, on 25th of January, they also stopped the private vehicles. So basically, since 25th of January, we cannot move around the city unless we drive, we ride the bicycle or by walking. But the first days were really very hard because we didn't know so much. We didn't understand what was going on. And suddenly we got the news that the local health system had collapsed. So basically they told us, don't get sick, because if you get sick, nobody is going to take care of you. The local health system, the doctor are sick, they are spreading the virus. Of course, we don't know how much of this was true and how much was oversaid, but in reality, we know that the local health system collapsed. In fact, the situation started to look better only when they opened new temporary hospital, temporary recovery area like gym or like dormitory, university dormitory. They were converted to temporary recovery area. And so, but then starting from February 15, around the middle of February, we were asked to strictly stay at home. Before we could go out, maybe with some limitation, like every day only one person of the family can go out for shopping, go to supermarket. Supermarkets were still open, pharmacies were still open. But since February the 15th, February 20 around, they closed everything. Nobody can enter anymore, could enter anymore in a supermarket, in shops. Only authorized people, very few authorized people. And there are some volunteers. These volunteers buy the food, buy the medicine, whatever people need, and send at home with home delivery. So since February 15, basically, we are shut at home completely. We can go out only to pick the delivery that they send us at home.
Wow, that is really astounding to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so it is 2 months basically that we are here, shut here. But yesterday we got the good news this morning that yesterday, for the first time, there were no more new infected in the day of yesterday. So this is some good news, but we are still shut in Wuhan. Rest of China already restarted. Rest of China slowly and gradually is restarting. Some cities faster than others. But in Wuhan, hopefully next week we can restart. But there is really a lot of, how to say, they are very careful. They are very careful for this restarting, because they are really worried that something is going bad, and so the situation starts again to look on the serious side.
So curious, why do you think they did not want anybody even going outside at all and just staying in? Were they afraid that somebody was going to wander off and interact with someone else and start the virus again? Or was there something else that they picked up on?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because many people don't understand the importance of staying at home. I mean, I'm looking at Italy because I'm an Italian person. So, Italy probably now in the world is the worst country, at least among the country, the democracies which declare the real data, let's say the real figures. So I'm looking at them and I see a lot of people still are going out. And I tell them every time, you must stay at home. Why? Because we have, in our experience, till February, mid of February, the numbers were still increasing around 3,000-4,000 every day. So 3,000-4,000 new infected here in China, of which 90% in Wuhan, basically, because the rest of China was not much affected, luckily. So let's say around 3,000 new infected every day is a really high number. And a lot of people dying, a lot of doctors infected, which means that the doctor then pass the disease to the patient, making even worse. The worst thing is that mid of February around, a lot of nice days, early spring days, so the weather was good, sunny and hot. So a lot of older people started to go out on the streets. to enjoy the sunshine, to enjoy parks, even if parks were closed, but just walking on the street. So there were a lot of protests because they were saying on the socials, they were saying all the people are the most affected, as you know, by the virus. The mortality, the higher mortality is all the people, and still they are going out. They are spreading the virus. So the government had the only choice to say, okay, now nobody can go out. So because you don't understand our rules, you don't respect our rules. Only one person per family going out per day. So we take really the strongest decision. Everybody stay at home. Who goes out is fined, or if insists, even is jailed. So this was the only way to let the people understand that going out is not a good thing, and stay at home is the best way to avoid spreading the virus around.
Lorenzo, why do you think it spread so much more in Wuhan versus other areas of China? Is that because of the population density, or what are they saying there?
Okay, first of all, we have to be very careful with the figures. I'm not really sure if the figures are completely trustable, but I think yes, at least starting from the end of January, maybe not before. Why it spread more inside Wuhan? Because it started, officially it started here, unless we trust some other kind of theories, but without any proof. So I trust that the virus started here, was passed from some wild animal to a human being, and it took some time before the virus changed itself, mutate to pass from a human being to another human being. Before it could pass only from animal to human being, and then suddenly could pass from human being to human being, becoming really very serious. So the first period, they underestimate the seriousness, the threat of this new disease, because they said, okay, let's say if we don't touch this animal, we don't get the virus. But then they understood that when the virus passed to human being to human being, it became very, very serious. The real reason why the virus didn't spread to the rest of China is because they took this sudden and very hard decision on 23rd of February to close completely 40 million people. So 40 million people are not a small amount of person inside an area from where nobody could go out. So basically, it's like in the movies, like in one Hollywood movie, you know, where you see that there is some contagion or some area, and then the army arrive and they they limit this area and say who goes out, we shoot. So this is what really happened at the end of January, 23rd, 25th of January. Some people were able to escape to go out from the city in the early hour of 23rd, but then the army arrived, the police. So basically, they closed completely the city from the rest of the country. And this was the only way to avoid the virus from spreading out. Then the other really strong measure is that basically they extended the holidays, spring holidays, let's say New Year holidays, to all the country for another 3 weeks. So basically 1 month holiday. And all the country stayed at home. Everyone, even in Beijing, in Shanghai.
I think you just hit mute. Lorenzo, I think you just hit mute, or maybe I did, one of the two.
It looks like you hit mute, Lorenzo.
In Guangzhou.
Oh, there you
Hello?
go. Yeah,
Yes,
you were
sorry.
on just a few seconds there. Well, Lorenzo, if you were to look back when the virus started to escalate, is there any hindsight that you could look back and say, I wish I would have done this differently? Maybe something that people in the U.S., because right now there's some people that are taking it very serious, and some people, especially from what I've seen on the news anyways, there's it seems like the virus is not affecting young people as much. So I think some of the younger people aren't as concerned about it. But with that being said, is there anything that you would look back and wish that maybe you would have done a little bit differently? Maybe it was from getting supplies or food or staying indoors more. Anything that you wish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was very lucky because, as I said, I live very close to the market. I live very close to the hospital. I go to work every day by subway. So subway is public transportation is one of the worst way to get the virus because they are really very good ways to get infected. So I was really lucky if I was not infected. And no, I think what we did was unfortunately to underestimate the virus on the first 3 weeks of January. Honestly, we knew everything the early days of January, and then we didn't took any precaution. Even us as family, we just said, okay, nobody is doing anything, so it means it's not a serious thing. We should have done much more when we heard the first news, but it seems so stupid to use the mask to protect ourselves because nobody was almost using it. It seems so stupid to avoid going to restaurant, to go to, I don't know, gym or to yoga lesson because, okay, nobody is doing anything, nobody is caring. And then suddenly it came out that in reality, we were every day facing really a death threat, let's say. And about the mortality, which affect more older people, yes, it is true. But pay attention to one point. In normal condition, the virus spread very fast, but only around 20% of the people affected develop it in a very serious, in a very grave way. So I mean pneumonia. 80% of the people who got infected don't even know they are infected, or just get some flu. So they pass it without any big problem. If the health system is working properly, if the hospital, the doctor are aware and are working properly, almost everybody is cured. Only really old people or people with weakened by other symptoms have a really bad situation. But in Wuhan, and now also in the area south of Milan in Italy, the real situation is that the health system collapsed, which means that the patient pass the virus to the doctors, and the doctors are passing the virus to other patients which were hospitalized for other reasons, for other symptoms, whatever they are. Most of them are old because, you know, many patients in Italy, also in China, are old people. And so they are basically killing the patient who enter in the hospital with other symptoms. Because the doctor in Wuhan, you can imagine, more than 3,000 doctors are said to got infected in Wuhan. Some of them even died. I know some of them, unfortunately, because the hospital is close to my home, so I went sometimes there for some check, and I know some of them, they died. In Italy, in south of Milan, already almost 100 doctors, for a small population, much smaller population, already almost 100 doctors are confirmed to got the virus. Already 3 or 4 died. So the real danger of this virus is not that it is so serious. It can be cured, okay? Many people are cured. The real danger is when the local health system doesn't work anymore, because then, as they said us, you must not get sick. Otherwise, you are basically in deep shit. Sorry for the word, but in this case, really, we didn't know if we got sick. We didn't know if we could get cured or not. For around 10 days, the situation was out of any control.
That's a
Lorenzo,
great. Go ahead, Jerry.
Sorry, thanks for sharing that, Lorenzo. But just curiosity, you said you're originally from Italy. So did you have any family or friends that are affected by this in Italy?
In Italy, I know people who are affected by the virus in Italy, not a really direct friend, let's say for sure, but I know some people who got affected by the virus. Indirectly, I also know a couple of people who died, but I never met them, just because other people know they are. In China, yes, in China instead, in Wuhan, I think everyone knows. I know many people who got affected. Most of them recovered. Many of them were young, so around my age. Let's say I'm 46, they were 30s or 40s, so many of them were young. They got infected, they got even seriously infected, which means they developed pneumonia. Luckily, it happened after February 10. So they could get treated in the new hospital, in the new area, and almost everyone now is safe. A few are still recovering. A couple, as I said, unfortunately, are not here anymore. And the one is a doctor, eye doctor. So he was curing me, treating me and my children. And he was quite young, I think around 55. So he was not really an old person. And unfortunately, the virus doesn't look really, when the situation is out of control, is out of control.
Sorry to hear that.
Lorenzo, you made a really good point. I think that we need to drive home about the collapse of the healthcare system, because if the doctors get sick, then people that go to hospitals for pregnancies, for other illnesses, you name it, they can't be treated either. Is that what you're saying, Lorenzo?
Bravo. Yes. So this is what is my meaning. When the health system collapses, there is no safe for anyone. Even young people can be affected. So it is not true that only older people should stay at home, because the most dangerous is the speed at which this virus is spreading so fast that even if only 20% got serious symptoms, this 20% is a high number, is high enough to basically to fill completely the health system, and they are unable to treat all the patients. And then, as you said, a pregnant woman or anyone with a normal flu or a broken leg has to go to hospital and then catch the virus there, and then maybe the situation is becoming worse and worse.
And I guess at that point, it makes sense to stay home, because you're less likely to get injured or anything if you're in your house. And at that point, well, so right now there's a lot of people concerned about work, right? Layoffs are already starting to happen. There's so not only do you have a virus and the potential of getting sick, but it can affect income as well. Were there any businesses during this whole situation that stayed in business, or did everyone lay everyone off? Or, I mean, what happened from a business standpoint?
We cannot go to work at all. So now we are restarting slowly, but basically you are right. There are a lot of people here in China. You know, China is not really a rich country. There are a lot of rich people, but there is still the majority of people who are maybe not really poor, but are struggling every day for their life. And now these struggling people are really suffering, because for 2 months they didn't get any income. You can imagine, like shop owners, small shop owner, taxi driver, these kind of activities. They are not getting any income. Maybe they have to pay the rent or the loan for their house. Maybe they lost money because they bought a lot of material before the big festival of the Chinese New Year, which was canceled. So like food, some shops selling food, they bought a lot of food, which now is gone. So they have to throw away everything. So the situation is really very harsh. The government is helping with some tax reduction, and helping with another way, like giving food for free to some poorer and older people. But basically everything has stopped. I and other luckier people, we can work from home, smart working. I think this is, we can thank the technology nowadays, because it helps us to keep in contact, like with you, like with my family and with my friends. We can chat on WhatsApp, on WeChat, and we can also work. Me and my wife are working from home, but we are the lucky part, and we are the minority. I think a majority of people are really suffering a lot for 2 months of lockdown of the city.
So the people, go ahead, Jerry. Yep.
I was just going to say, one of the things that's interesting that you said that, and you know, our conversation just before the call, before we started the actual interview, you talked about there's a heavy load now because of people working from home, and that's why you can't use video. And so are you saying that the majority of people that can work from home, they're doing that now? That's what I'm understanding, right? Creating this load on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I mean, now is 10:30 in China, 10:30 a.m. So there are also a lot of students who are studying from home. Many schools, universities, high school, college, they organize themselves to arrange at-home lesson also because we don't know when the school year can restart. Maybe never. Maybe we will restart with the new year with in August. So we don't know exactly. The rest of China, some province, some really small province with very few people restarted, but basically the biggest city like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, they are still waiting to open the school maybe next month. Let's see. And yes, a lot of people, as you said, are working from home. Not so many are able to do it because not everyone has internet, still internet at home. They are using mostly smartphone.
Okay.
Also, a lot of people are using the telephone and the connection to order food because the only way for us to get food or to get any stuff around that we need is to order it from internet and get home delivery. So a lot of people are using the phone just to pass the time, to watch video, to play the game, just to pass time, and also working, ordering food for home lesson. So it's overcrowded now. The network is really overcrowded.
So Lorenzo, the people that lost their jobs and they have no income coming in, and maybe they don't have a lot of savings either, how are they getting food? How are they paying just the utilities? How are they surviving?
Okay, for the utilities, the government asked to the companies, gas, water, electricity company, to let the people have a minimum, even if they don't pay the fee, because in any case they are necessary to survive at home. For the food, in my area, it is quite a good area, so we don't really suffer a lot. I know in the suburbs, there are some poor area where they distribute free vegetables, for example. Also to us, they send one bag of free vegetable, and we even refused because we didn't really need it. We said give it to other people, but because I'm foreigner, they really take care of me a lot because I stayed here in Wuhan. I could have left. I could have evacuated on early February when the Italian embassy and the Italian foreign ministry organized the evacuation for the Italian citizen, but me and another 10 Italian people and also other foreigners. I know a lot of English and American staying here in Wuhan, and we are struggling all together. So they look at us because we are foreigner, we stay in Wuhan, they look at us like, okay, we support the city, it is our city, maybe we are married, we look up people, so they really think well of us, they try to help as much as possible. The government only did this because they asked also for the rental of the apartment, but the government said the rental is not something we can decide. You have to discuss with the apartment owner. So some apartment owner are understandable. So they say, okay, let's wait. Other insist people must pay. There are a lot of American English teacher, very young, maybe 23, 24 years old. They teach English here. They are really in hard situation. They have no salary, shut here in the city without maybe knowing so much of the language, without knowing nobody. So we try to help each other.
Wow.
So a quick question now, as a sales leader, how are you directing your team during this whole time? You're shut in, you're stuck. How are you directing your team? I think they're looking at you for direction, right?
Yeah, luckily we moved our factory. Now we don't have a factory in China anymore because already a few years ago, China started to be less competitive in terms of pricing, in terms of cost, production cost. So instead in Italy, we have a factory in Italy, which is incredibly almost now cheaper than the production in China. So luckily for us, we moved a lot of production to Italy in the past. So in China, we are still selling a lot. It's a big market for us. And also luckily my team, the people working with me, they have a laptop. So they can do the same activity I'm doing from home, smart working. We talk to each other by phone or by email every day. We can even have a video call if we need, but we try to avoid. And we can talk to the customer because we have customers all over Asia. So we talk to them. Also in many other countries in Asia, the situation is quite harsh, like in Korea, in Japan, So the situation, the concern is everywhere. But up to now, we still can work and continue to support and serve our customer.
Very good.
I know we're running short on time here, and Lorenzo, I really appreciate you making time for the call today. It was very insightful and should be very helpful to those that view this podcast. Jerry, did you have any questions before we close out?
No, that's all. I really appreciate you joining us, Lorenzo. Thank you so much.
Lorenzo, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close out the podcast? And just make sure I pronounce your name right, Lorenzo Mastrotto, right?
Yeah, very good, very good. Your pronunciation is really Italian style, very well. Yes, if I can say just one sentence: stay at home if you can. I know it's quite hard. It's very boring, but better bored than sick. So in my experience, the only way really to be safe is stay at home. And the positive thing is if you stay at home for 2 weeks without any symptom, without anything happening, it means that you didn't get the virus, because the virus lasts for around, let's say, 8-10 days, let's say 2 weeks, just for safety. So if you stay at home, you are safe. Go out just for shopping, take some precaution, avoid talking to other people, stay far from other people, even if it is really sad to say like this, but unfortunately it's the only way. We have to stop the virus from spreading around, and the virus jumps from person to person. If it can jump, it will die.
Okay. Thanks again, Lorenzo, and hope we can stay in touch, and good luck to you in Wuhan, China. Stay safe, and looking forward to seeing news articles about the recovery that are happening there in Wuhan. And for those of y'all that are paying attention and watching the podcast, thank you for joining the Digital Selling Secrets podcast. Thanks again, Lorenzo.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
Bye-bye.